Okay, I'm going to be right with you. I have to change one thing here. Hide floating meeting controls. I think we're good to go. Um, as you know, because I've been talking to you the last couple days, I'm Risa VanFleet. And originally we had planned for Tracy FaaThompson, my co-creator of animal-assisted play therapy for the past 20 years, to join us. She might be able to join us live at the end of this, but for right now, I'm not sure at the point that I'm recording this because she has just moved house, farm, everything in the midst of, I guess, really horrible rain in the UK, and she's trying to kind of get her internet and everything set up. So hopefully she'll join us. If not, I have a couple little videos that maybe I'll share of her and the work we do in the UK as well as the US. So I am going to talk about the competencies needed for animal-assisted play therapy and for other animal-assisted services, because we really think these are valuable for anybody that's doing animal-assisted work of one type or another. Now, always when I start this, it doesn't seem to want to forward, so just bear with me because I find it. There we go. The copyright material, please no photographs or videos of this. You will get a copy of all these videos from the conference, and you will also have the PowerPoint. So you'll have all this information anyway. We just, for copyright purposes and privacy purposes in other cases, we don't want people taking their own pictures of this. So we appreciate your respecting that. This is the citation for this presentation. And the examples that I'm going to talk about do apply to a variety of species that you might work with: dogs, horses, cats, rabbits, goats, guinea pigs, cows, and more. So we'll probably not talk about all of them very much, but the animal-assisted play therapy work and the competencies we expect people to develop are part of it. This is the description that was in the flyer, so I'm going to just keep rolling along with that. More of the description. And these are, I'm going to go through what's on this graphic in terms of the different animal-assisted play therapy competencies. So just again, I think you've covered it, or we've covered it earlier, but what is animal-assisted play therapy? And these are, kind of just a brief description and a definition that we've used since 2004. And then our book, which was the winner of the 2018 Maxwell Award for the best book on the human-animal bond. Again, somebody else may have already talked about it, but you'll have this information when you get everything that you'll get after the conference. We're going to talk about the guiding principles very, very briefly, and they are on this graphic. If you have a large screen, you'll be able to see it. If you're watching on your phone, you probably won't, but that we have them pulled out here, and that's the principles that we follow. Basically, almost all of these, if not all of them, refer to not just our clients and meeting our clients' needs, but also to the animals themselves. We want people to have truly reciprocal, respectful relationships with the animals. We want them to be considered as equals in this process. And that has a lot of implications for the way we work and for the competencies that we have to develop. So this is a chart, a slide with all our competencies listed on it. Within each of these, there's probably more details, and I'll talk about some of them. And I've color-coded this to match this graphic, which is our listing of all the competencies that we are asking people to learn and to master and to become, really good at incorporating. And then the printed out here. And now what I'll do is go through each of these 4 major categories and talk about a few of the items under each one. We don't have time to go through all of them. You learn that if you come to like our animal-assisted play therapy level 1 training, learn even more about it in our level 2 training. But for now, we'll at least introduce you to the whole idea. And the first question is, why have competencies? This sounds like kind of a boring topic, and what's the big deal about it? And what I have here is a picture that you might be noticing already. some things about this pony's body language. There were two ponies from an animal assisted services program that were featured on a news program, a daytime news program, I think, and then they had them on at night as well, or the recording of it. And I saw it, and so I just took a picture of it because, you know, the question I have is, what's wrong with this picture? Because they were talking about, oh, aren't they cute? Aren't they wonderful? And the people that brought them to the studio, it was in an indoor TV studio. So you can imagine usually 2 or 3 cameras focusing on them, a lot of people, and some of the times the cameras are moving around a little bit, sometimes not. But they were very clearly proud of what they were doing, and it was probably a very, very nice service for their clients, you know, the people that were involved in interacting with these ponies. But we'll look at this in just a moment further. But what we want to do is to make sure we provide safety and comfort for our clients, but we also want to provide safety and comfort for the animals. Not everybody talks about that, but I think it's a real important topic. We want to minimize the risk for everybody, including the therapist or the educator that might be working with the clients or students. And we have to ensure a sufficient background on the human side, on the people side, with the therapist, educator, facilitators to manage the sessions. So there's a scope of practice issue for mental health professionals, and really for any professional field, they usually have scope of practice expectations, which is you don't practice outside the scope of the training that you've had and the preparation you've had. But sometimes we don't know what that really means and what we need to be learning as we go through all of this. This picture, if you'll notice, it's very tight. It's a knotted halter, and those knots are designed, if you buy one, usually they have a disclaimer on it. The knots are designed to kind of go into the nerves on a horse's face. And so many people think they're comfortable. They might be if you have them loose enough. This one certainly is not loose enough. And generally speaking, in our work in animal assisted play therapy, we prefer not to use these at all. In fact, we prefer our animals to be naked most of the time and not a whole lot of equipment on them. You'll also notice how tight they're holding this pony. So there's a little bit of anxiety probably on the part of the person that, oh, I've got to make sure these ponies behave. But also, if you think about the ponies, they're in an environment that's very foreign to them. And if you look at this pony, the ears are kind of flattened down. If you look at the eye, it has a dullish look to it. The nostrils, you know, you can look at this whole presentation of this pony. Does not look like a happy horse that's like eager and interested to look around what's going on. And that's the kind of thing when we're in our actual therapy sessions. We don't want a horse or a pony to look like this. We want them to have a much more perked up, ears forward, what's going on. You know, they might turn their ears around a little bit to see what is going on in the rest of the environment, but that's all part of it. So this is the first area, the therapist-animal relationship competencies. And in our work, the relationship comes first. Lots of people say that. We try to live it. And hopefully there's more and more people that are doing this kind of work that are also living it. I mean, keep my fingers crossed. Not everybody does. So we need to learn a great deal about animals, and just having lived with an animal our whole lives is not enough. I lived with animals my whole life, and I was shocked when I started learning things about them that I thought, oh, gee, what else is there to learn? So the ethology, the study of natural behaviors in a natural environment. There are studies of ethology of dogs, the ethology of horses, of what are they like, you know, in terms of if we let them be in their own natural environment. Now, dogs have adapted more than just about anybody else over thousands of years to live in the human environments, in many different human environments. But it's still, there's still a study of what do dogs do when we let them do what's of interest to them. And I think that's valuable information. We need to understand how behavior works. We need to understand development, and we've already covered some of these things in the conference so far. We need to understand about their senses. Dogs do things with their noses that we can't even imagine. And I've lived with scent hounds who are even more superlative in terms of their olfaction. And it's really kind of incredible, some of the things when you observe them and see how they react to smells and sniffs. When I got my dog Murray, I took him on his first walk. We went to a little park nearby. He was pretty well behaved. I got him when he was 7 months old. He found a piece of grass and he sniffed that grass up and down. One blade was higher than the rest, and up and down. And I thought, well, it's his walk. We'll let him sniff a little bit, see what he's getting, somebody's pee mail or whatever it might be. 8 minutes, I think, later, he's still on that same blade of grass. I thought, okay, let's move on. And he came along with me, found a new blade of grass and started the same thing there. And that's when I realized he's a dog with a very strong olfactory sense. But I'll never know what he was sniffing and information that he was getting from doing that. Other sight hounds, their eyes and their sensitivity to movement and things like that are really beyond our abilities. So really understanding all of the senses of the animals, both as a species, as a breed, if we have a breed that we know or a breed mix, and of the individual. Ultimately, everything comes down to the individual. Then we need to know how to build reciprocal relationships. A lot of human-animal relationships are pretty one way. I'm going to teach you a bunch of things and you better do what I ask you to do. And in our work, but also in our personal lives, those of us that are involved in animal-assisted play therapy, we really are seeking a more reciprocal, two-way street in the relationship. So Tracy, who I've been to the UK many times and have seen her with her horses many times, I've been out with her when we were riding bareback. I'm not much of a rider, but I was on a horse that was very stable and very nice to be a top of, other than being very tall. And we were out and I saw Tracy. We came to a crossroads and the horse looked one way and Tracy says, is that where you want to go or where do you want to go? But she had to get off her horse to bring down a gate. It's all through farmland. And the horse kept turning his head toward that gate. And she said, okay, well, if that's where you want to go, I'll go get the gate down and we'll go that way. That's part of being reciprocal, that they get to make choices a lot more than we tend to let them make. Usually I'm working on, there's a book that will be out next year sometime that will have a lot of this information in it. Then we need to have, and this is to me the single most important thing to learn, animal body language for the species you're working with, and then to observe your own individual animals, because there's little quirks, there are little idiosyncrasies and other, just the way they express themselves. We have to become not just familiar with it, but fluent in it, because that can help us in a number of different ways. We can see trouble coming, like if all of a sudden we see a little stress signal, that means we better pay attention a little bit more. If we see another stress signal of different body parts or through the body posture or whatever we're watching, that means we might need to take some action because our animal is getting stressed. We can see it much earlier when we're fluent in understanding that body language. And we can get the dogs, clients, everybody, horses, clients, anybody, excuse me, out of harm's way, reduce that stress immediately. It also helps with risk management. It makes it much better risk management. We are going to have a lot less risk. It's probably what I'm trying to say, because we can see it and we can take action earlier before things kind of accumulate and build up. We talk about animal responsive handling and decision making. And that means we listen to our animals, but then we have to behave based on what we're understanding from our animals. It's basic empathy. I'm going to pay attention to my animals, and then whatever I'm learning from them, I'm going to act accordingly. But also understanding that small animals don't like to be picked up. We've already covered that with the guinea pigs. And so we're going to make decisions in our work in the moment sometimes. Other times it might be a policy or general practice that we have that will be responsive to those animals and what they are communicating to us. Animal-friendly training, that means using positive reinforcement-based methods, force-free methods. We don't need to yell, scream, correct our animals. Boundaries are fine. There's ways to set boundaries, sometimes just with your hand. We do set boundaries, but we don't do it in a punitive kind of way at all. Most of the time we are, instead of finding fault with something the animal does, what we do is we pay attention to what do I want them to do instead of what they're doing? And how do I then teach them to do that? So that's, if I don't want my dog to jump up, I want to kind of give them a message. No, you can't jump up. Here's what I want you to do. Oh, you've got all 4 feet on the floor. That's great. And then we can show our pleasure with them for doing that, either with, I usually use just touch or something, or smile, but you can certainly can use food and treats some of the time too. Proactive and split attention means we can look ahead and see problems coming. Split attention means we got to pay attention to our clients and pay attention to the animals that are involved all at the same time. And that is much more difficult than I think most people realize. And finally, just paying attention to the natural environment and being real aware of what's going on in that environment. Okay, we'll keep moving here. So the therapist-handler animal relationship, this just shows an example of Tracy. Those were 2 working border collies that came in from working all morning and decided that they thought they should play with us in a workshop that we were doing in the UK. And Tracy was kind of playing with them and getting them comfortable with the whole thing. And they were curious about this stuffed toy that was there. So we're looking for all of these kind of things that I've just talked about as part of that relationship. We have to live it, though. We have to be doing this every day, because whatever we do every day will show up with our clients in our interactions with the animals too. We want the things to be playful. We want the animals to be willing to work, not just, oh, this is what I got to do. I know what this is about. And yeah, they give me a few treats for being here. That's not what we're after in animal-assisted play therapy. We want them to go, oh, what are we going to do today? I have an idea. And sometimes they will go grab a toy or engage in a behavior that can be actually incorporated into a therapy session. So this is, again, relationship and handling. Like animals to be off leash. If they cannot be off leash, we want to have a loose leash. So this is Lucy Llewellyn from the UK with her late dog Luca. And you can see how nice and loose that leash is. Nice smile in the leash. Check-in. She's looking at her dog. I think in that very moment, he might be looking at something else, but he often, I saw them together many, many times, and he would always check in with Lucy, really very nicely. But also, if you have a dog and you're standing there and all of a sudden they seem like they're looking off somewhere, I like to look and see, what are they looking at? And that can be done with a horse, a cat, almost any animal that you might be working with. So the fluency we've already talked about, and seeing the world through the animal's eyes is part of what we're trying to do. So the next category is animal-related competencies. And this is embedded. We use something called the goodness of fit approach. I presented on this in last year or the year before in our conference. But it's really, who is this animal? And what do they like to do? And what are their sensitivities? And we build everything we do around that. Instead of trying to, can your animal do these 20 or 30 things? They must be okay to do whatever you want in therapy. I'm probably exaggerating that a little bit, but we want everything to revolve around the animal and revolve around our client. And it takes some creativity, but it's fun once you start thinking this way. So we want to think about, how do we select and prepare our animals Starting in May, we're going to have some free Friday shorts. And I will try to provide information to everybody about those. They're going to be just hour-long sessions. And how do we prepare animals? I'll go into that in more detail in one of those in May. It's not every single Friday. It's 4 Fridays, and then we'll see what the group is interested in and plan some more. We have an animal appropriateness scale that looks at the animal's personality and preferences on a lot of different dimensions. And I'm going to, I think, talk about that briefly. Then we look at the animal's trained behaviors. There are some things they need to learn in order to work with us in whatever work we're doing. And then each therapist does a therapy involvement plan for each animal that is their plan of, this is who my animal is, this is what my cat loves to do. These are things the cat is not crazy about. So when I'm doing therapy with my cat, here's how we'll put all that together so that the cat is feeling really good about, being part of sessions. And of course, not all animals are suited for this. So the animal areas that we assess are on this wheel that I've already mentioned a couple of these. And then we look at the environment that the animals need. So I'm not going to work with horses in a really small enclosed space. Animals need a lot of space. So even dogs need more space than we think. And they should always have an exit route, a safety area where they can go, no humans follow. Pictures, the horse that belongs to a friend and colleague of mine that we often had gone to her place for a while to work with the horses. And there was some water on top of that barrel blowing bubbles in the water. So I see a horse doing that and I start thinking, oh, what can I do with that for therapy purposes? This is Amanda Wolf's goat in Alaska. We had a level 2 workshop at her place, and the goat was, she calls it the drive-through window. we all finished what we were doing, went inside, the goat's there by the window going, hey, what's up in there? And Josie, one of my dogs, kind of she does a funny little jaw snapping thing when she wants to get attention and keep playing. So the therapy involvement plan that we develop includes all these different components. So this shows us that the therapist has mastered certain skills, namely, how well do I see my animal? I want to make sure that they see their animals very, very clearly. Not with, oh, my dog's the most perfect dog in the world. Even if that's the case, we want people to still see that these are strengths. Here's some other areas, not so much. And now how I'm going to build what I'm going to do around it. So all of this, what's on the chart at the bottom is written up at the top. It's a little bit easier to read. And we have everybody do this for every animal every couple of years. Now, if you're working with 30 chickens, we might not ask you to do 30 of them, but a collective, something that shows that you really understand the chickens, and maybe highlight a few different ones that have different personalities. The next area is the therapist competencies. I'm just checking the time to see how I'm doing here. And of course, my watch is acting up, but we'll work it out. Education competencies in one's profession. So you have to be good at what you do, whether you're a teacher or counselor, social worker, psychologist, therapist, any of those might be therapists, marriage and family therapists, whatever your competency area is, whatever your profession is, I usually suggest get good at that first before you add animals, because adding the animals is complicated. Even those of us that are really experienced as therapists, when we started thinking this way and adding animals into our work, we found that, like, boy, I feel really incompetent because there were so many new things to pay attention to. And I think not everybody will tell you that, because they might not be paying as much attention to the animal as we want them to. But I think most people that go through our program usually have that same reaction, which is, oh my gosh, this is hard. There's a lot more to it. We have to be aware of so many other things. So these are some of the areas you want people to be competent in, including play therapy, if they're a play therapist, educators, And then how to plan, how to conceptualize and plan, conduct, facilitate in the moment, and process, if any further processing is needed, their animal-assisted play therapy sessions. So here's just professional competence. I think I've already said all this. Yeah, I've said all that. And then this is, I just thought I'd put this in here. It's a little guide based on an article I wrote. It's up on my VanFleet.com website, I believe, of just how to do case formulation. So this isn't about the animals. It's just, this is complex enough. Then we add in an animal and have to incorporate that animal's needs as well. Then we have ethics and welfare competencies, and we want people to adhere to all their usual professional ethical standards. We want to be making sure that if we are adding the animals in, that we are still seeing effectiveness of this intervention. And so if you know goal attainment scaling or other ways of doing pre and post measures or whatever you do with your clients, we want to see that it's working. We don't want to just, well, it's nice, fun to do, clients like it. That's not enough as far as I'm concerned. We need to see effectiveness of the intervention. Right now, we are doing a little study with all of our certified people in animal-assisted play therapy to see what they think the changes are that we can then measure in future studies. We want to be faithful to the values and principles of animal-assisted play therapy on behalf of the clients and the animals. And we want to adhere to the highest welfare and well-being standards for the animals. And again, that's all of these take time to learn. There's a lot more to them. We like to have voluntary participation of all the animals. So usually they're not on leash, they're at liberty if they're out in the field, and they can come and go as they wish. Not always the case, but vast majority of the time it is, and they don't need equipment on even. But I love it when I go to see somebody's horses for the first time and they all come running up to the fence. I think, okay, there's a relationship with people that they have. But unfortunately, too much of the time, I show up maybe to visit the person that has them, and they all go to the farthest end of the field or the farthest end. And that suggests to me that they get caught and put to work in a way that they're not really enjoying it. Client or animal, who comes first? Both. There's not a first. We have to look for how do we keep both of them involved, interested, and if there's a problem, then we need to have a plan for how we're going to deal with the problem. Animals need safe spots and exit routes and permission to use them at will. And then we might need to have a plan to remove the animal to another location if things aren't going well, the animal's stressed or the client is stressed. We've already talked about several of these things, but every time we're doing an intervention, any session that we're having, these are the 4 things we keep in mind. So that kind of reflects that both the client's needs, the animal's needs and interests, then our own way of working, whatever that is, and then the environment in which we have to conduct the service, whatever we're providing. This is an article that appeared in just recently in the Chronicle of the Dog. And I think that, yes, this is posted now. It's been published since I did the PowerPoint at IAAPT.org under articles. And it was really the idea of, do we really need to get dogs to accept hugs or kisses? And the answer is no. In fact, those can be quite risky behaviors. Some of the highest incidents of children getting bites on the face come from kids hugging a dog like this. That's not a friendly gesture to dogs like it is to humans. So they don't get it. They might accept it from people they're very familiar with, but it's much better. It's a risky thing to do in a practice. There's a philosophical reframing, and that's in general, if you read any articles, professional articles, journal articles, or popular articles, there's this huge emphasis on how wonderful animals are for people. And probably you wouldn't be listening to this if you didn't believe that for yourselves. And they are. But how wonderful are people for animals? I want, in the way we do our animal assisted play therapy, but I wish it were the true for everybody, that the animals would say, yep, you are okay. I like being with you. I like going to work with you. Not all the time. We don't have full-time dogs or horses or anybody. Usually it's about 2 hours a day, maybe every other day of actual work time. So we have to start balancing these things off. And again, what are the assumptions when a caring, seasoned animal assisted therapy practitioner asks, how do I get my dog to accept hugs? How do I get my dog to do this, that, or the other thing? And the assumption is, oh, that's what therapy dogs should be able to do. They're not the same as service dogs. Service dogs have specific tasks that they're trained to do, but this is much more about not getting your dog to do anything except to be themselves, but under control. I mean, there is that element of it. So those are probably not the right questions. Instead, how do I build connection between my animal and this client? How do I increase understanding between them? How do I encourage the enthusiasm of the person while guiding them to do it a little bit differently? How can I build in some enjoyment in this relationship? Great book. If you haven't found it, it's a classic and it's very profound, but it's simple to read. But it's the other end of the leash, why we do what we do around dogs. I highly recommend everybody to read that and to keep it in mind, not just for dogs, but for horses, cats, cows, any other species. So animals don't need to tolerate our behavior, especially when they're involved in therapy work. We can change our behavior to make it more enjoyable. And this is where ethologists and positive animal friendly trainers can be very creative and say, oh, you know what you could do instead? You could do this. And they have a lot to offer us. So most of the instructors for animal assisted play therapy now have dual credentials in both animal behavior and ethology, as well as their primary field in mental health, plus they know animal assisted play therapy. So I've already said most of what's on here on this slide. So a lot of times people want, they want to hug the dog, or maybe the dogs lick a lot, and we don't want that necessarily to happen. Especially if you've got somebody with an immune system that's compromised, you don't want to have a lot of dog saliva going on around their face. So what I do is teach a simple touch me. If you go to a dog training class, they'll teach touch or touch me. Just have the dog touch its nose to his or her nose to your hand. And what I do is I just call it something different. I call it kiss me. So I put out my hand in a particular way. The dogs have all learned, these are my 3 current dogs, have all learned to touch the nose to it. And I just say, kiss me. And the dog does that. And that redirects the clients. It's something fun for adults, and for kids, it's kind of like, oh, the dog does like me. Here it came over and is interacting with me in that way. With developed competencies, again, I've already talked about this. We decrease risk, we enhance the relationship, and we ensure quality service for our clients. That's a win-win-win if we can see it. This is a free resource that I have made available to everyone, and the link where you can get it. Do therapy animals enjoy their work? Here's how to find out. And it's a whole PowerPoint. It won an award. It was a finalist in a competition of the best online article on behavior and training for those couple years from the Dog Writers Association of America. And so this is a you can go through it. You can use it with other people if you're trying to educate other people about, like say other therapists or other counselors or teachers or whomever. You're welcome to use that, and you have access to it. We have upcoming animal assisted play therapy level 1 workshops, USA, UK, and Australia. We sometimes are doing presentations in other countries as well. This has become very international. These are actually, this is an old slide because we now have another one for Georgia coming up in the fall, and another one for the, where is it? Forgetting. Anyway, we have this on the website. So to get the current locations, Oregon. Oh no, that's on there. I forget. There's another one anyway. So I put the slideshow together before I had those added. But we do have a couple others. Oh, Texas. There's another one coming up in Texas in the fall as well. So just go to the website. It's listed there. You can find out where we have these workshops. And if you need information, this is how to get in touch with me and also with Tracy, and just kind of a smattering of some of the animals that are involved in this. So that brings this to a close, and I'll turn it back over to the live Risa. Okay, now I just got to turn it off.